Hey, good morning. It's Patricia Murphy. It's Tuesday. This is Seattle Now. Love it or hate it, it's almost time to change the clocks. Daylight savings time is coming up this weekend, so you'll be losing an hour of morning light. The twice-yearly ritual has sustained despite numerous attempts by Washington state lawmakers to simplify things. Reporter Tom Banse will help us sort through the details in a minute. But first, let's get you caught up. Brace yourself if you need to fill up your vehicle. The cost of gasoline is a lot higher than it was even a week ago. AAA says the average cost of a gallon of regular unleaded hit $4.63 in the Seattle metro area yesterday. That's the highest it's ever been, and up 50 cents from just a month ago. AAA says crude oil prices are being driven up by the war in Ukraine, and that's pushing gas prices across the country higher than they've been in almost 15 years. Former Seahawk Richard Sherman has agreed to a plea deal after his arrest in Redmond last July. Sherman was accused of trespassing at an in-law's home after crashing his car. He pleaded guilty to negligent driving, speeding, and criminal trespassing. Sherman will pay about $1,300 in court fees and spend 2 years on supervision. And Governor Inslee signed 2 bills Friday aimed at fixing parts of a sweeping package of police reform measures passed following racial justice protests back in 2020. Police departments across the state said the measures created confusion about whether officers could use force or detain or transport people in certain non-criminal situations, like a mental health crisis. One of the newly signed bills allows for that. The other fixes an oversight that seemed to inadvertently prohibit departments from possessing certain less lethal weapons. Officers are still required to exercise reasonable care and appropriate de-escalation tactics before using force.
Mr. President, I come to the floor today because it is time to make daylight savings time permanent.
That's Washington Senator Patty Murray speaking on the floor in November. She wants daylight savings time, that extra hour in the evening, to be permanent. To Murray and other supporters, it's clear as day.
To put it simply, Americans want more sunshine and less depression.
Of course, the senator did not get her way, and daylight savings time is not permanent. For now, we're stuck fiddling with the clocks in our microwave and car stereos twice a year. But tomorrow, Congress is taking up this issue again, giving hope to people who crave that extra hour in the evening year-round. Northwest News reporter Tom Banse is here. He's been following this story for years, chasing the light, if you will. Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Hi, I'm okay because it's still before the time change. Check back next week. I'll probably be grumpy with the rest of us.
So let's start with some context. Back in 2019, Washington state passed a law signed by Jay Inslee to make daylight savings time permanent here. And of course, again, as a reminder, daylight savings time is that extra hour in the evening we're about to get this weekend. Tell me what happened with that bill.
Well, it passed and then nothing happened. We're still making the switch and having all those aggravations you just mentioned because we are dependent on Congress to make permanent daylight savings time an option for states. You could, as the legislature proposed and briefly took up earlier this winter, do standard time year-round without having to get the green light from the feds. But daylight saving time year-round requires a change into the Federal Uniform Time Act, which dates way back to the 1960s when this Congress got rid of the patchwork of some states. The time zone changed and the observance of daylight savings time changed from county to county. So this Federal Uniform Time Act needs to be amended, and Congress won't give even the time of day to that issue until now. Until this week, they're going to have a hearing to just talk through the options. What are the advantages of year-round daylight saving time? But that won't spare us from having to change our clocks on Sunday.
Right. Now, I want to go back to this for just a second, because if we can simply just switch back to standard time, have that extra hour in the morning year-round, why haven't we done this?
Well, most people, at least on the West Coast, say they want that extra hour of daylight in the evening. Have it light on the by the time you get home, and then maybe even light a little after that to do some gardening or some shopping or something like that. There are folks who have kids who go to the bus stop in the morning and think it's pretty important that it be light, not pitch black, when they're walking to school in the morning. Those folks would be fine with having standard time year-round. But apparently most of us, as communicated to our legislators back in 2019 when this finally got to the finish line, were having a clear preference to have the hour. I mean, the day is not, the amount of hours of sunlight in the day are going to be the same no matter what. But you can shift the observance of time to have that hour of sunlight at the end of the day or in your morning commute. And the majority of people were saying, I want the daylight time scheduled to my day where there's more light in the afternoon and evening.
And you can see why parents and some people might prefer that morning light if you're an early morning worker, or again, if you have a young person who needs to get to a bus stop and wait for a school bus early in the morning. That light definitely comes in handy. And like you said, Tom, nobody wants to see the sunset at 3 o'clock in the afternoon during the darkest days of our winter. That hurts people around here a lot.
Yeah, so nationally, I think part of the reason Congress isn't itching to step into this fight is that when you poll people nationally, as the Associated Press did a couple years ago, it's not quite one-third for permanent daylight time, permanent standard time, and switching twice a year, but it's pretty close to that. So there's not unanimity. I don't know if we're a little more sporty on the West Coast and want our after-work Frisbee games to still happen or what. But on the West Coast, California put this on the ballot. 60% of the folks in 2018, I think it was on the ballot, voted for permanent daylight saving time. So out here on the West Coast, we want permanent daylight saving time. That's what the legislature did in our state. That's what Congress won't give us so far.
Well, and this is especially important for states like Washington and Maine, who see those extreme light changes because of our position on the globe.
Right. And, originally this was conceived as an energy-saving method. And people have done studies now because other places around the world have gone to a year-round observance of the same time. They've ditched the switch. There's not a big energy savings to be had from our twice-a-year switch. So the original rationale for what we're doing, it doesn't exist anymore. And so it's coming down to preferences. And, are we causing more traffic accidents by switching twice a year and having people be all groggy next week? Or is this bad for maybe high school students if we go to year-round daylight savings time and they just can't wake up in the morning because there's no sunlight, helping our circadian rhythms stay in sync? I mean, there are other things going on now that it becomes a societal choice. And if there's not overwhelming, push from the people to the members of Congress nationwide, it doesn't seem to be registering as something. It's not that hard what we're asking Congress to do is, pass a bill, just say you have permission. If your people choose to go to daylight savings time year round, you can do it. That's all we're asking for here at the state level, and they won't go that far.
At the same time, Tom, we are also only talking about 60 minutes in a day, 1 hour. And you and I have been, working by clocks for most of our entire careers. You know how quickly an hour can go by.
Sure. And so, I would prefer to be personally on year-round daylight saving time just because I'm not a morning person. But I can deal with it. And, if this is what keeps parents happy to have a little more light on the morning trip to school, yeah, sure. It's not the end of the world. It's not the most important thing. But, back when this passed the legislature, it was interesting. There was a lot of engagement with this topic. And, if we wrote a story about it on KUOW.org, it got a lot of clicks because people care about this. And this is something you don't need a PhD degree to understand and have an opinion about. So, it looks like we're going to keep doing what we're doing, switching our clocks for a while longer. Congress will have a hearing, but they're not taking up any of the many bills that have been proposed on this topic that would actually change it. They're just kind of teeing it up and doing a little bit of talking this year. Just settle in, take a chill pill next week and enjoy that extra hour. I mean, this does open the season, my favorite time of year, where we start getting those long, light-filled evenings to get things done.
I'm such a morning person, Tom. I can't wait for the sun to rise early in the morning. I be a standard time girl. Come at me, people. I am the early bird who really, really appreciates a good early sunrise.
There's now a group active on the West Coast. They're outnumbered right now, called Save Standard Time, that is organizing on the internet and getting people to show up at hearings to say just what you're saying. If we're going to lock the clock, lock it on standard time.
These are my people. Tom, can you tell me what Wednesday's discussion in Congress is likely to go like? What are they talking about?
They're bringing in invited guests, including a professor from the University of Washington, Steve Calandrio, who is in the year-round permanent daylight time camp. He'll talk about how there are many different reasons, including personal preferences, but also economic reasons to have permanent daylight time. They're also bringing in a few industries, and I don't know all of the positions of these industries, but where the testimony is already publicly posted, we see the National Association of Convenience Stores is in favor of permanent daylight time. They argue it would help their bottom line, that people, if it's light in the evening, feel like they can get more things done, including shopping. So that might help your local neighborhood convenience store ring up a few more sales. There are, as I said, maybe half a dozen bills in the U.S. House where this hearing is happening in a subcommittee of the Energy and Commerce Committee that would go from the range of every state that switches time now would be moved in one fell swoop to permanent daylight saving time, to as simple as just giving the green light to states that want to change, can change, and this would be an allowable thing under the Federal Uniform Time Act. As I said, they're not actually picking up the specific bill. They're just teeing up the issue and hearing input from a variety of invited sources.
Tom, I'm fascinated that the convenience store lobby is showing up for this. What other businesses are showing up? I find this part really fascinating.
There are some businesses that would prefer to either keep the switching twice a year or more in the full-time standard time camp. Those include the golf industry and ski industry, interestingly enough, who have morning people who show up for the discounted early tea times or want to make first tracks on the powder first thing in the morning. And, if it's December and we're on year-round daylight time, first track in the morning, the chairlift doesn't really get going till 9. And if you're a skier, you might miss some business not being open earlier. So, it's the minority of businesses of, all categories that are in the full-time standard time camp, but there are some that have spoken up who say, we will be worse off under year-round daylight time if the West Coast went down that path.
Well, with all the chatter, like you said, Tom, we're unlikely to take any action again nationally this year or here in Washington state, so we can all fight about it again through the Krabbies next week as we get adjusted to our new time. Really appreciate it, Tom Banse, Northwest News Network reporter. Thanks.
Always a pleasure, Trish.
Don't forget to change your clocks this weekend. Daylight savings time officially starts at 2 a.m. Sunday. Thanks for listening to Seattle Now. Caroline Chamberlain Gomez produced today's show. Matt Jorgensen does our theme music. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you tomorrow.
Hi there. One more thing. This year marks 70 years of KUOW keeping you informed and connected. As we look forward to the next 70 years, we'd love to hear from you and learn about what KUOW means to you and why public radio matters. Call 206-897-1303 to leave a quick message or visit KUOW.org/testimonials to learn more.